Hello and welcome to Political Frenemies. I'm Chris Newton, I'm a former Tory defence advisor and I'm an academic as well. And before I introduce this week's guest, I suppose I better say hello to my co-host, Lib Dem activist and former councillor, Mathew Hulbert. Hello Matthew, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yes, still just about a Lib Dem activist. We'll get into that a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit later on. So good to see you guys. We'll also get into the fact that even more than before, I'm now unleashed to properly be able to say what I think. Not that I've ever really not done that. But yeah, so good to see you guys. And good to see our guest, because as he'll no doubt tell us very shortly, he's had a bit of an evening of it, bless him. So it's good to see him.
Yeah, and turning to our guest, he is, pretty much a virtual regular on the show now. He
I should be charging you a fee.
Yeah.
We don't get a fee.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a budget of zero, so I'm not quite sure how we can arrange that. But it is a Tory commentator, Tory councillor, an all-round good guy. It is the one, the only Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. Hello, Matthew. How are you doing?
Hey, Chris. Hey, Matthew. How are you guys? You all right? I'm so excited to be back on. You're completely right. It's been one of those days. I don't know if anyone knows, but apparently there's a war going on in the Middle East, and it means for all of us who work in the public sector or in government, you can have some very, very long late nights. But no, I'm grateful to be here. Glad to be with you guys. And, I know that it's going to be great fun on this podcast, so I'm always happy to come on.
Yeah, and what a week to come on as well, because really there is one story in town, and that is, of course, the Iran war and the US and Israeli strikes on Iran. There have been one or two other stories from a British perspective. We had the spring statement, which usually is quite a big event, but it was such a non-event this year that nothing was really announced. We also had some immigration announcements as well, but a lot of those were re-announcements, and we've discussed them before. So our focus today is on the war and the British reaction. So that's what we're discussing. Let's get into it, shall we? So, as I said, the focus of today's podcast, and we are devoting the entire podcast to this very serious, momentous event, and that is the outbreak of the Iran war. Now, as I said, we are a British political podcast, so that's the perspective, that's the prism through which we are going to... Yeah, exactly. That is the perspective through which we are going to examine this. So, firstly, I'll give a little summary as to the key events. So, on the 28th of February, the United States and Israel began coordinated airstrikes on Iran, launching a major campaign against Iranian military infrastructure. The conflict has since escalated rapidly across the Middle East, with Iran responding with missile and drone strikes against Israel and against states hosting US forces in the Gulf. Britain has already felt the consequences. Earlier this week, a drone believed to have been launched by Hezbollah successfully struck the British airbase in Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri. The government initially decided not to participate in the strikes and at first refused US requests to use key British bases. That decision was later partially reversed as the crisis escalated. Critics argue that the government's response has been hesitant and reactive. Particular questions have been raised about the delay in deploying the Royal Navy's destroyer HMS Dragon to the Eastern Mediterranean. So that's a brief summary of the key events. Of course, there are lots of other elements to it. So as indicated, Matthew has had a personal connection relating to this, and during the course of the discussion, we will get into that, and I'll make sure that we will do. But I think, as way of introduction, I think my first question to the panel is simply how do you think the government has handled this, and how do you rate sort of Keir Starmer's week in relation to this? Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, if you'd like to start.
Blimey, I mean, crikey, the one person who I think didn't realise war was coming was the British government. I mean, seriously, America sent the Armada and put it all over Twitter that an Armada was going to the Middle East ready for an eventual war in Iran. We still are waiting for this British destroyer to leave the Portsmouth docks and head over to the Middle East, which will take 2 weeks anyway to get there. I mean, the conflict could be over by that point. It's crazy to see what's happened this week. My personal connection to it is working for an MP. We obviously get inundated with people stuck in the Middle East now asking for repatriation to the UK. And the only thing we can say is follow the guidance. Follow the guidance that's online. Call the number. Make sure you register your presence. We cannot cut the line. We can't hotline you through to get a seat on that flight. Just follow the guidance. But I've been disappointed by the slowness of the UK government to react. The frankly shambolic way that this country has presented itself on the international stage. I mean, we had to rely on the French, to support and protect our military bases abroad this week. I mean, heaven help us in a situation where the Great Britain and Northern Ireland bastion of this part of the world has to rely on the French, of all people. So, look, it's been a disappointing week. I think the British forces have proved themselves to be as depleted as possible. But, I mean, God help all those over there who are stuck in the downfall of this tyrannical regime in Iran. And thank God that Khomeini's dead, despite people here in the UK, mourning his loss. I don't mourn his loss, I celebrate his loss.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned sort of the British nationals are sort of stranded in the region, and we had a little discussion about this before we went on air. But you've been involved in sort of various kind of similar incidents, and so what's your observation regarding sort of whether the government has learned any lessons at all from the previous?
No, it hasn't. So the Member of Parliament who I worked for nearly 5 years. I was there when Afghanistan fell. I was there when Ukraine was invaded by Russia. I was there when everything with Israel and Hamas kicked off. And I've been there when everything's happened on the downfall of Iran. We have not learnt our lessons. I'm really sorry. We are dreadful as a country and government in learning our lessons on getting repatriation flights off the ground. I mean, yesterday there was supposed to be a repatriation flight takeoff, but for operational reasons they couldn't get people on the flight in time. I'm sorry, if you book an EasyJet or a Ryanair flight, you make sure you're on that damn plane in time. But if the British government get involved, we can't seem to do it. We've not learnt our lessons. It's an absolute scandal. I think there are lessons to be learnt. It's a fact of no one's going to do it. The most important thing is if you're stranded in the Middle East, follow the advice online. Do what it says. Don't think that you know better. Do what it says. But let's also be clear. The missiles that have been attacking, whether it's Dubai, whether it's Jordan, wherever it is, are attacking American bases or infrastructure in those countries. There's been no sense of just widespread Iran is bombing and blitzing the entire of the Middle East. It is targeted attacks on US infrastructure. So the vast majority of people will be okay. But from my point of view, I am very disappointed, furious that lessons haven't been learned. And frankly, these are my friends and my colleagues who are stuck in the middle ground.
Okay, Matthew, what do you make of the government's sort of handling this week, and also its decision making? It's the decision over the key matters such as allowing sort of US bases to allowing the US to use our bases for these operations. Do you agree with some of the judgments that Starmer has made there?
Well, first of all, I want to, and I do actually mean this genuinely, thank Matthew for his service. I think parliamentary staff are the great unsung heroes of what happens in Parliament, and let's be honest, in terms of the casework, etc., they do the vast majority of the work, whilst their principals are speaking in Parliament, etc. And I'm sure that this has been a stressful week, and I know that this has been quite a stressful day for Matthew, so really appreciate him being with us. Look, I mean, it won't surprise you to know that I think that Starmer is right to be cautious in terms of joining this adventure or misadventure in the Middle East. As I often say on this podcast, several things can be right at the same time, right? Do I mourn the fact that the Ayatollah has been killed? No, I don't. He led a tyrannical regime which doesn't allow protest, which has reportedly killed thousands of protesters and dissidents and campaigners for a free and democratic Iran. So do I mourn him or members of the administration there who have been killed? No, I don't. But do I also, as a liberal, believe in an international world order and the fact that we have international rules and that countries can't just go off and do what they want? Well, of course, I think that. So, I'm not sorry to see these people go, but do I think this is a wholly legal act? No, I'm not sure about that either. So I mean, I think Starmer is right to be cautious. Look, as we'll get into, I don't think either of the three main British-wide party leaders have covered themselves in glory this week. I'll get into a bit later some of what Kemi Badenoch has said, which I think has been pretty disgraceful. I'll get into some of what my own leader has said this week that I've been very public in saying hasn't been right in my view. So I don't think it's been a great week for British political party leaders.
Okay. Speaking of Keir Starmer, so he's, I mean, Mathew Hulbert there has said that he's right to be cautious. I mean, a lot of people have been saying that Keir Starmer he's been sort of too cautious to the point that it's affecting British reputation. That he's taken a too rigid interpretation of international law. That he's shown us to be pretty weak, or very weak on the world stage. Actually, not getting involved, or at least not being involved in the strikes after the attack on Akrotiri, and essentially he's also proven himself to be an unreliable ally as well with his treatment of the US, but also in relation to allies in the Gulf. So and I'll put this to Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. Has Starmer made the wrong calls here with regards to not getting involved in the actual strikes, either in relation to, because I think that there is a legal justification for it. Iran has been attacking Israeli and US interests, for years and decades, and also unofficially there's a humanitarian element as well. I mean, what really triggered this was the massacre of protesters, absolutely disgraceful. So do you agree with the critics of Starmer that he's too cautious? He's reveres international law too much at the expense of the British national interest?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you cut Keir Starmer open and he's a lawyer, not a leader. He bleeds international laws and diplomacy. That's why we're handing over the Chagos Islands. That was so instrumental to the US being able to strike on Iran this week. There's a question about whether the UK should have been involved in the initial strikes. I think not. I think the fact is this is a war between the US and Iran. Iran has been a proxy in the region, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's Hamas, whether it's even fighters down in South Africa that Iran have been funding. That is the axis of evil that Iran have got. And America is the only country in the world that could dare to fight and strike another nation and get away with it with strength and fury. But I do think there's a question mark about our special relationship with the Americas. At the end of the day, Keir Starmer allegedly delayed giving America the permission to use the Chagos Islands to launch their strikes from. That could have been a crucial delay. Imagine if we were sitting here and Khomeini had moved to a different building or a different room, or we'd lost track of where he was in that window where Keir Starmer had said, I'm not sure about you using our bases that we've shared together for so many decades. So there is a question mark about Keir Starmer on the international stage. From my point of view, I think we have really seen the weakness of the British state this week. We've seen how irrelevant we are. America's new best friend seems to be Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu and America are cracking on with, frankly, whatever they want and asking Britain as an afterthought. I mean, there were even details that we were not being told information and sharing of information when everything was going on with Hamas and the Israeli state, and the Americans were getting involved. I mean, the facts that the Americans would circumnavigate their closest friend, apparently, is a shocker. So no, I think that it's a really scary week for the British government and for the British state. We have seen how small we are. We've seen how irrelevant we are. We've seen the state that we have been left in. And all the politicians in the UK can do is squabble about how quickly they're going to get to 3% of the funding of the argument. I mean, sorry, but we are in war. It doesn't matter if you get to 3% of GDP in 5 years' time. We're in war right now.
But Matthew, do you think it's the job of the British Prime Minister, whoever that is, and representing whatever party, to always agree with the adventures and the decisions of the President of the United States?
Not to always agree, but to realise that the Iranian regime is the head of the serpent. If you cut off the head of the serpent, you kill the snake. That's the issue with Iran. Iran is a proxy terror organisation around the world. So we've all been wanting from the sidelines to see Iran dealt with, but no one's had the chutzpah to actually deal with it apart from America. And the one moment that America goes and does it, we almost threaten legalistic arguments at them and saying, oh, well, naughty, naughty Trump for possibly breaking international law to start this war that we actually support. It's an irrelevant argument. I agree. We shouldn't always pander to the Americas, but this is in our interest. It's in our interest that the Iranian regime falls and we get a democratic Iran.
But doesn't history have a warning for us? I mean, look at Iraq, look at Afghanistan there for 20 years, and yet we might as well say that we in effect lost, because look who's still in charge there. The Taliban are back in charge. Women have been back to being subjugated, all the rest of it. And so I think there are warnings, and I think, Iraq and Afghanistan, Iraq especially, are long in the memory of the British public, and they didn't agree with that then, and I think polls show they don't agree with this now. I think you can argue whether this is right or wrong, but I think there's a real feeling that this isn't our problem. And as I say, we can have a debate here about whether we think it should be our problem or not. You clearly think it should. But I think the British public are increasingly cynical after those previous misadventures about how involved we should be. And just on that, never mind the British public, the American public, and especially the Trump supporting public, the MAGA voters, the MAGA adherents, part of the reason why they supported him was his America First, No More Forever Wars stance. And they think in quite large numbers, I understand from the reporting that I've seen this week, feel let down by their great leader, and none other than Marjorie Taylor Greene has been saying that this week. So potential trouble for Trump in his own backyard as he heads towards the midterms in November, where it looks pretty much like he'll lose both the House and the Senate, and therefore will be stymied for the rest of his time as. Well, I say for the rest of his time as president. He's been talking again this week about the fact that he thinks he should have another term. So, I mean, God help us all on that one. But I mean, I think, and also just one other point before I hand back, Chris. So, I've been thinking a lot this week about how Starmer has reacted. And because, as Matthew likes to tell us, he's Mr. Flip-Flop, I wonder if he was in a stronger position, and indeed there are the Starmer flip-flops, which we always like to see. I wonder if he was in a stronger position, Starmer, whether he might have very much gone in with Trump and Israel on this. I think as much as I agree with his caution, I think that he's being cautious because he now needs to. I mean, as I say, I think he's right, but I think he's being cautious because I think he now feels that he needs to. This is Keir 2.0. This is centre-left Keir. This is soft-left Keir, and he feels that the electorate that he needs to attract opposes this war, and I think he's right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that. There's a few points I want to come back on in relation to this. But firstly, in relation, is this our problem? I think it is our problem. Iran is, as I said, attacking British interests. We've got British assets, British bases, sort of in the region. So it's our problem in that sense. It's also our problem in relation to terrorism. The MI5 last year said that they've foiled 20 attacks, 20 plots. On us, so it's a real sort of direct threat to us that way. They also sponsor the Houthis, which caused absolute havoc in the Red Sea a couple of years ago, and that affected global
trade. But the
trade.
British public are sceptical, right, Chris? You agree that the British public are sceptical?
But I don't think the British state has done a very good job at communicating these things to the public. So I think that's part of the problem. I think you make a valid point in relation to learning lessons of the past, and we shouldn't simply dismiss concerns whether whether this is going to be another Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth. So I think those are legitimate concerns, and I think in the objectives that Trump set at the outset, I think those are quite sort of definitive objectives: destroy the missiles, destroy the navy, neutralise the proxies, and ensure that they don't have a nuclear program. That is a clear set of objectives. So yes, learning the lessons is we must do. We must also consider the other side of the argument in the sense that different contexts are different. So for all of the failures that you can point to, I can point to successes: Germany, Italy, Japan, if you discount the emperor, the fact that the emperor did still stay. Serbia, although Serbia's gone rogue now again. So there are different contexts, and there are differences here with Iran in the sense that there is already an uprising going, and the fact that there is a potential figurehead. He may not be the one, but it's the person who the Iranians, both inside and outside Iran, are shouting on the streets: Javed Shah, long live the king. So I'm referring to the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. And there's also a plan. There's also a plan on the internet about transition. Will it work? Is it a guarantee? I have no idea, but it's a head start from Iraq. But,
And Chris, can I ask you? I mean, you're our defence expert, and I obviously bow to you on these matters because of your obvious knowledge. But in terms of so on Wednesday at Prime Minister's questions, and I think I don't think any of the three main leaders covered themselves in glory at PMQs this week. I was critical of Ed Davey, you were critical of Kemi Badenoch, and I think probably all three of us were critical of Keir Starmer. But Labour would say, and there's no Labour person here this week, so Labour would say, and Keir Starmer reeled off quite a long list of what he says we're doing, quite a lot of preemptive stuff. I mean, does that count for nothing, or is it just from your view? Well, it obviously is your view, not enough.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they did move some assets to the region, but it's clearly from what we are seeing, it wasn't enough. Why there wasn't any sort of naval assets in the region, and they had withdrawn from the region late last year and early this year. This is the kicker, right? This is the real thing. We've known about this for 2 months. Right, as I said, what kicked this thing off was the protests, and then we saw the build-up, and to have this state where we don't have adequate air defences for Akrotiri is absolutely unacceptable. So and all of that, what that's exposed there, and all of the consequences stemming from that, it just illustrates that the response was inadequate. So I'd like to bring in sort of Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. Would you agree with that assessment? Just the sheer kind of response, the slowness, especially from both the MOD and the FCDO.
Yeah.
It's been it's very difficult to find any redeeming features there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Christ, we all knew that war was coming, but the only people who didn't know that war was coming seemed to be Britain. I don't understand why we've been so slow. I don't understand why we've not been sending troops over there. I don't understand why we've not been sending ships over there earlier. I mean, Christ, the size of the British Navy could be fit on a postage stamp at the moment compared to other nations. We used to rule the seas. What's ever happened to those days where we had a great British military and a great British Navy and a great British Army? I mean, seriously, I think we've got something like 6 destroyers, 3 of which are in repairs, 3 of which need several months to get up to speed, and there's only 1 other destroyer that is now going to head over there, but it's going to take 2 weeks. I mean, it's ridiculous. The only thing I would say, Chris, as I come back slightly on the alternative for the Iranian people, there is another alternative to the son of the Shah, and that's someone called Maryam Rajavi. She was the political opposition at the time of the Islamic Revolution, got outcast, much like the son of the Shah, and she's been in Paris, obviously fighting an alternative. And I would say this, because obviously the Member of Parliament I work for is very much pro-her, and I've got to learn a lot of what they're doing, but she's provided a 10-point plan to democracy in Iran, and basically said, look, put me in charge, in 6 months' time we'll have elections, and you can choose whether you want me, whether you want the Shah, whether you want a political party, whatever you want. But let's at least get to that point where we have cycles of elections and things like that. And the only difficulty I have is when it comes to the son of the Shah, people have very short memories. They forget that his father was just as tyrannical as the Islamic Republic that's been there ever since. He had his own hit squad that was effectively the early IRGC. He has said that he will be a monarch, frankly, with no accountability and no one to hold him to account. So, look, at the end of the day, it's down to the Iranian people to choose who they want. But the difficulty is that where we've seen Trump in America do everything with Venezuela and topple Maduro and have someone ready to come in, it sounds like the person Trump wanted to take over of Iran may have been killed in some of these strikes. And now he's not too sure who's going to take over. He said that Reza Pahlavi was not his preferred option. He's a nice guy, but he's not got the support in Iran. I don't know if he's met with Maryam Rajavi or not, who's the alternative option. But Trump said the other day that he had someone in mind inside Iran, but that person seems to have been killed in the strikes. I mean, that's not great regime change planning, if you have it my way, but we'll see. At the end of the day, the most important thing is the Iranian people have to choose. None of us can choose. No international country
I agree,
can choose.
I agree, but Matthew, do you think that? And again, thinking back to Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, do you think that the West can impose democracy and Western values? Do you think we can actually impose those?
What the West is doing at the moment is providing the tinderbox for the Iranian people to force it, right? That is what Trump's doing. He is frankly weakening the regime and allowing the Iranian people to rise up. The problem is in Iran is they have their version of the Gestapo, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, right? This is a homemade thug group military who will shoot you in the street for daring to oppose them. They're like their own version of the Gestapo or the SS. That's what the Iranian people fight. And when there were protests earlier this year, Iran admitted that they had killed 3,000 people, but international organisations and the United Nations said it was close to 30,000 people had been killed by the IRGC for protesting. So it is an incredibly difficult world to be in. What the Americans are trying to do, and I support this, is levelling the playing field, giving the Iranian people the chance. But it's down to the Iranian people to step up and take it. And we've seen in the north of Iran, the Kurds, the Kurdistan forces start to rise up, start taking control of towns and cities, starting to fight back against the IRGC. But they are a military. They are a privately funded, state-backed military in Iran. It's not going to be easy. And remember, whilst they have guns and bullets, the Iranian people only have power and free speech.
Yeah, no, I mean, I perfectly take your point about Pahlavi. I mean, I mention him because he's the name that I've heard like been shouted out. Did you see the video this week of him getting fooled by those two Russian pranksters? Absolutely hilarious. This guy who Russian prankster who portrayed himself as one of the German MEPs. Called himself Adolf and had a little moustache. We all know what he was trying to portray. And Reza Pahlavi's there taking the call, saying, "Oh yeah, I'd do anything to become the monarch of Iran again. Absolutely anything at all the natural resources Iran's got." So look, I think there's a lot to come out of this. But no, it's a fair point. There are multiple options on the cards. At the end of the day, it's not for us to decide. It's for the Iranian people.
So Chris, can I ask you? I mean, I've just been watching some of the coverage before we came on to do this, and I saw that I saw live Trump's press spokesperson taking a few questions and still won't answer whether it was the Americans who bombed a school in Iran, killing hundreds of children. And the commentators afterwards on this news channel said, look, the very fact that they aren't just coming out and saying, no, it wasn't us, means that very likely, yes, it was them. And they're just going to keep saying they're investigating until they're brave enough to say that, yes, it was them who did that. I mean, if that is right, that wasn't a very good start, was it?
I mean, all I would say to that is that I think we should wait for the facts to emerge. I mean, obviously, this has been the deaths of those children. I mean, yes, it's something that shouldn't have happened. It's obviously marred some of the campaign, which from a military point of view, from what we gather has been successful. But I think with a lot of these things, there's a lot coming out from obviously Iranian state media, and again, we should take that with a massive pinch of salt. If you look at the complex, if you look at the satellite imagery, the school, from what I understand, the school was part of the complex at one point, and then it wasn't. But if you just look at the imagery, if it wasn't pointed out to me where the school was, I would have assumed that the school was part of the complex. So it is under. Well, it's you can see how.
But that's not good enough, is it, Chris? I mean, that's really not good enough, is it? Surely, I mean, you're the defence expert, but I would have thought, as a layman, that's really not good enough. Saying, oh well, sorry, it just all looked part of the same thing. No, that's not good enough.
The test under the law of armed conflict is that they've got to they've got to ensure that they've got to do everything that they can that is reasonable to ensure that there is a minimum loss of civilian life. So that is the test. So if they did everything that was reasonable at the time, then that is permissible under international law. But again, that's the key question. That's the key a question that we don't have answers to at the moment. What procedures were followed? Did they absolutely ensure, what constituted those different buildings? It also has to be said that the IRGC, and there's a bit of video footage about this regarding this. The IRGC are actively putting military equipment in schools and are using schools as headquarters and bases as well. Again, doesn't excuse hitting the school if the school is has children in it, but again, it complicates the assessment. So the assessment is, have they done what's reasonable in the time? And if they haven't, yes, there are serious questions to answer there.
So
Matthew.
Matthew, can I ask you? There's, as always in war, and when I was training as a journalist 20 odd years ago at university, we were always told that the first casualty in war is truth, and there's two kinds of air war here, isn't there? There's the literal air war, and then there's the on-air war, and both matter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I was going to come back to Chris on was the fact that in war, there's always casualties, right? We all have to accept that. There is always casualties in war. But what is not acceptable, and what I think is happening here, is where human shields are being used. And one of the frustrations I have about everything that was happening between Hamas and Israel, which I see playing out right now in Iran versus America, is the use of bases and military bunkers and proxemics to civilian infrastructure. Hamas would hide under hospitals. Hamas would hide under schools, would build their arms where human civilians rested. And so what do you expect the opposition to do?
I'm not saying it's right, but also... I'm not saying that's right, Matthew, of course I'm not. But in a sense... Of course they're going to do that, aren't they?
No, but that's my point. Yeah, I would never think of using a human as a shield to my own war. That's the mind and the sadistic nature of these terrorists that we want to get ourselves into. Yeah. It's a war crime, exactly. And this is where I was going to say, Chris, I was going to sort of interject and ask yourself... I think that's what we're seeing at the moment with America versus Iran. We see America where they've got destroyers and bases and military where they say, right, we're going to strike this point and do this damage. And Iran is hiding behind the people. What is the calculation? Because I know for a fact that there is a method of effectively calculating. If you're going to wipe out one terrorist, it accounts for X number of civilian lives. This is sadly a mathematic game because... it is a value of how much greater it is for the world. And that's what, I mean, I am sorry to anybody who tries to watch this and think that they should defend the Islamic regime. You are defending terrorists at that point. I have no sympathy for any of them who have died. I have no mourning for any of them who've died. I mourn the civilians who've lost their lives trying to raise awareness of what the heck is going on in Iran, where we all think it's a far-off distant land in the Middle East where we maybe had a war 20 years ago. That's my frustration. But at the end of the day, I think it's slightly hypocritical for us now to be here behind our desks in our safe lands, worrying and tweeting about the fact that, oh, well, bad on the Americans for bombing a school. Let me just forget the fact that there was a military base underneath it, beside it, next to it.
Well, just to say this one sentence, and then, because I know it was a question to you, Chris, and I know Matthew won't have meant it like this, but don't forget, some of us have very dear close relatives with missiles going above their houses at the moment. So we're not just sat in our safe houses, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't mean it like that as well. I've got colleagues and ex-staff members in the same situation. So it is just the fact that, you know, I find it frustrating that we are here, not us three, but there are parts of the media here in the UK who will focus on the very small minutiae of the grand picture. You know, that one piece of the puzzle that doesn't seem to fit right, but we're not looking at the entire photo and what it's building. And that, I think, is my frustration. But sadly, I don't think us three on this podcast are going to solve.
Yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, the other bit that I forgot to mention about the assessment is that the collateral damage to civilian casualties must not be disproportionate to the military advantage gained. So if it was a high value target, then the threshold for collateral damage would be higher. But again that's an assessment, and it's a complicated assessment. And what annoys me when people go around, especially in relation to the Israeli operation into the Gaza war, is just saying everything's a war crime. No, you've got to conduct these assessments based on the law of armed conflict, which are not precise. The wording that I use is not precise. It's based on contextual assessment of the situation at the time. And it's also important, as Matthew Goodwin-Freeman has said there as well, to remember the full picture. And yes, the deaths of the children are absolutely tragic, but we also must keep in mind the potentially tens of thousands, 30, 40,000 that the Iranians massacred during the protests as well, and that's what they want us to forget. So, but we must remember those when we're discussing this.
So Chris, can I ask you a couple of questions? So first of all, can you comment on what I just said to Matthew there about the in-the-air war and the on-air war, and how important both of those are? And then also, I just want to ask you about, and I almost fear asking you about this because I think I know what you're going to say, but in terms of international institutions like NATO and the UN, I mean, are they anywhere in this at all or not?
Yeah, in terms of the air war, social media war, TV war. I mean, that is a fundamental part, the narrative war, and part of the reason why the Israelis, for example, found the Gazan operations difficult to sustain was because of the sheer international pressure that was brought on by the imageries that Hamas amplified, and as Matthew Goodwin-Freeman said just then, is they're trying to replicate that strategy, and they're trying to bring international pressure to that, and that's why they're also attacking the Gulf as well. Is they're trying to get those states to put pressure on the Americans to say, right, enough. And so the propaganda, the psychological war is absolutely fundamental in a contemporary conflict. As for the UN, as for international institutions, well, we know what Trump thinks of them. And we know what Trump thinks of the UN. You had the Marco Rubio speech at Munich the other week where he said, yes, UN, fine, but essentially we're going to protect our international interests. And especially with the UN Security Council, I mean, we're in the Cold War. There is deadlock in the Security Council. The Russians and the Chinese will veto everything the Americans do, and the Americans and the British will veto everything, or pretty much everything they do. So it is, at the moment, international institutions, they are nowhere because of the realities of the timeless reality of international politics, that hard power ultimately matters. That you can do what you can do is ultimately based on how much hard power you can bring to bear.
Yeah.
Shall we turn to the opposition parties now? And given
we must.
Yeah, and Mathew Hulbert's going to be very surprised. I'm going to actually turn to Lib Dems first. So I mean, what am I thinking? I must be smoking something pretty funny this evening. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Mathew Hulbert in first is because of his own personal connections with what's going on in the Gulf, and what Ed Davey in particular said about British nationals in Dubai and British taxpayers in Dubai. It's pretty strange stuff, given this serious time, and he's having a go at British, very rich British people. I think it's absolutely bizarre.
So I'll get to Ed Davey and his comments and what it's meant for me in just a second. So just to say, so on Saturday was my birthday. Well, my birthday this year, as you guys know, I was born on February 29th.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday
Thanks so
to
much.
you. Happy birthday, Mathew Hulbert. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. So I was out with Andy, good friend of our podcast, and others on. And my good friend Paddy on Saturday. We took ourselves to Coventry, so we weren't sent there. We took ourselves there, and we had a lovely time. And so here was me celebrating my birthday, and then you take a look at your phone, and you see that there's something going on, and then I heard directly from my sister with a video that my nephew James had taken literally out of kind of out of his bedroom window on the balcony of a missile going from Iran going above their home. Now, I'm sure it would be many thousands of miles above their home, but I had a moment where I got quite teary and quite upset because this was obviously distressing. Now I've been in regular contact with my sister, my brother-in-law, and my nephew in the days since, and they're perfectly fine, and they stress the point that the UAE government is looking after them all very well, but they do periodically get these alerts to say, they had one earlier today to say, get into your homes, missiles are set, we're hearing that missiles are going to be launched. The UAE are doing a remarkable job of intercepting these missiles, but I guess the question is, how long can that go on for? I mean, hopefully for as long as it's needed, but obviously, Chris will know better than I about these sorts of things. And then it came to Wednesday, was it Wednesday? No, it wasn't. Was it Wednesday? When Ed Davey said, yeah, Wednesday.
Prime Minister's questions, wasn't it?
Yeah, Prime Minister's questions, and I think it might actually have been in response to the statement of Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it might have been that. Yeah,
but whenever it was. And someone sent this clip to me. In fact, I think it was you, Chris, actually, saying this is what Ed Davey has said. And I'll be honest with you guys, it's been a really interesting week because, our good friend Peter Cardwell of Talk fame says of me that Mathew is reliably woke, and you always know that whatever the issue is, Mathew will have a particular point of view. And I think this is the first time.
He's definitely not blooming talking about me, I tell you that.
I think this is the first time in a very long time that I've had a point of view which you might not expect me to have, and I think that it's shocked some people, and some people have told me in no uncertain terms what they think of me in regards to that, which hasn't always been very pleasant this week. But I can only speak from the experience. So basically, what I'm saying to you is that if I didn't have relatives in Dubai, I very may well have been retweeting Ed Davey saying, "Isn't he right? Well done, Ed." But ultimately, I can only speak from the experience that I've got and the fact that I've got family members out in Dubai who worked very hard for the wonderful life that they have out there. Nothing has been handed to them on a plate. They've earned it. And they went out to Dubai many years ago. Did they go there to avoid tax? No. But is the tax situation in Dubai what it is? Yes. And so I went on GB News this week to say that, and to say that on this occasion I think my party leader is wholly wrong, and that if you're a British passport holder, regardless of your tax status, you deserve help from the British government. And I think it's pretty damn appalling when missiles are going off above the home of some of the few family members that I've still got left, to hear my party leader say that, to not focus on their, and I know it wasn't talking about my family in particular, but obviously I think of it from the respect of my family, that their welfare didn't appear to be his top concern. What appeared to be his top concern was having a go at people who live in Dubai, Brits who live in Dubai, because of their tax status. And I thought it was pretty damn disgraceful. And I went on air with GB News. I was pretty measured in what I said, but I said that I thought that he was wrong. And I don't want to go too much into this, but I think it's fair to say that Lib Dems in my locality didn't take very kindly to the fact that I'd gone on air and been critical of my party leader. and basically it's meant that I've given up a local role that I had with the party. I'm saddened about that, and I've been in touch with Chris, about this. But I'm saddened about that, deeply saddened. But I'm happy that I can now speak even freer than I was able to speak before, and that when I think my party does something wrong, I'm more able to say so now. So perhaps it's a good thing for me. But I'll just close this little bit, and then I'll get your guys' reaction to all of this. But I was very touched yesterday when I heard from my nephew James, from my brother-in-law Jason, who left me a voice note, and from my sister Deborah, all saying that they'd actually tuned into GB News Live out there, and they were very proud of the fact that I'd getting emotional about it. Apologies, sorry. They were very proud of the fact that I'd spoken out about this, and especially since they learned, obviously, it's had some ramifications for me locally. So all I can say to you guys is family above party. Family above party.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's not been an easy week.
No. I'm really sorry that you're feeling that way. As I kept saying to you, I hope your family is safe and staying safe and so forth. And I just think, I just think that's a really poor way of treating people. And sometimes I watched Ed Davey sort of this week, and I just think, and Matthew Goodwin-Freeman will know this. Sometimes that place, it's really detached from the world outside it, and
it's a proper bubble.
Yeah, it's a real bubble. It's like when I used to enter those funny doors at 1 Parliament Street. I don't know whether they're still there. I used to call them like the Star Trek things. I used to kind of imagine myself, I'm entering into a different dimension. And that's what it felt like. And I just felt, and Mathew Hulbert, you were absolutely right in the sense that this, the personal connection and attachment to the real world absolutely matters. And I just get the impression from Ed Davey, like he's completely lost the plot. He's completely lost the detachment from reality. I mean, to use this moment when everybody's worried and in a very serious situation, to make a point like that, I think that's one of the most despicable things I've ever seen from a politician. And I just think, what's wrong with you, man? What's wrong with you? So I just hope, someone in that party, someone in his team or in the MPs will get him to see sense on this one, because now's not the time to be making points like that when people are genuinely worried. And anyway, enough from me. Matthew Goodwin-Freeman.
Normally I like ripping Ed Davey to shreds, and very rarely does Mathew Hulbert hand it to me on a plate. But let me just preface with this. I thought you were brilliant on GB News. You were genuinely honest. Yeah. You were genuinely natural. You were genuinely you were having great, a laugh with the presenters as well at one point. You were having a good time. I think the printer's just gone under meltdown with me criticising, complimenting you on your GB News performance. Crikey. Look, at the end of the day, I think you were fantastic. I think it's disgraceful of the Lib Dems to have sort of attacked you or come after you or censored you after this. Listen, I know better than anybody what it's like to criticise your own party. I've spent the last 2 and a bit years doing it, flagging up where we've not been good enough, writing a blooming book about it. Small plug for a blueprint by Matthew. I'm a local councillor. I go on the TV, all these sorts of things. I've been a massive critic of our party when we've not got things right, and I don't think we're getting things right. But I've never had a tap on the shoulder. I've never had anybody say, no, I'm not sure about that. I've never had anybody from the party say to me, no, I think you need to roll back or resign from stuff. I've had friends, I've had colleagues, I've had people near me say that, but I've never had anyone in an official capacity do that. And so that's why I'm annoyed, because I thought politics was about agreeing to disagree. That's entirely what this podcast is based on. We can all disagree with each other, but remain friends. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I would have thought the Conservative Party has typically been a very broad church party. Seemingly is at the moment, apart from kicking out Robert Jenrick. But yourself in the Lib Dems, where now I'm going to turn the heat on, who's his name? Ed Davey. I'm sorry, but you guys are what, 4th, 5th in the polls? You're not heading up the next government. You're not looking like you're on the up. If anything, you need new voices to come through. How many years has Ed Davey been leader and we've not seen things improve? I'm really, really sorry, but if they have a problem with a genuine, honest Lib Dem activist on the grassroots, saying it as it is, putting his family first rather than the party, then I'm really, really sorry. That says a lot about the Lib Dems and nothing about you. So I'm really sorry what's happened to you. You and I both know we've been there in the green room waiting to go on air, chatting like friends and then sparring like enemies in the set. That is how it is. But I never ever would have thought that you before me would be the one to get the tap on the shoulder.
Right. Yeah,
Mathew Hulbert.
It's I don't want to say too much about it because I'm still great friends with lots of people in my local party, and they've helped me in all sorts of ways, big and small. But I've tried to see it from their point of view, and I guess they would say that they're trying to run a campaign, they're trying to win a seat, and noises off don't help. I think is what they would say. But what I would say in response to that is that I like to think I was measured. I talked about my family experience. They don't have to agree with me. That this was a rare occasion recently where I have been critical of Ed Davey, and it just really saddens me that the response has been what it's been. But now, in a sense, we're both free. They're free of me in the sense that I hold no official role anymore. Yep. And in one sense, at least, I'm free of them, and in that I'm just a card-carrying party member. I'm just an activist, and short of throwing me out of the party entirely, that not much more that can be done. And so I feel able, where it's warranted. It'll only ever be where it's warranted, but where it's warranted, I now feel much more able to come on here and say what we're doing wrong, if and when we are. So and my family all said to me, my brother-in-law said to me, I don't always agree with the points that you make, Mathew, but I always sit there thinking, good on you, Mathew, for putting your head above the parapet and going on and saying things which aren't always universally popular, coming on this podcast and saying things which quite often I'm in a minority of one in defending. But the reason why I love this space that me and Chris have created with all of our wonderful guests, including you, Mathew, is that actually we can do that, and we don't just say that we remain friends, we actually genuinely remain friends. And I think what I've learned this week is that you get to learn, obviously your family, but in terms of friends, you get to know who your real friends are, I think.
But also, Matt, and I tell you this from someone on the outside as well, it is a lot more fun. You can say what you want, there are no repercussions, and frankly, if people cannot stand you having an opinion, it says a lot more about them than it does about you. I've had the exact same happen to me in the last couple of months. I've had every thrown at me, every allegation, every rumour, every scandal and sleaze. Honestly, I don't understand it. I don't understand why the Lib Dems would do this to you. It is neither liberal nor democratic. And frankly, whilst other parties are available, I think you're actually going to start enjoying the next couple of months being able to say your opinion and say, well, sorry, I was part of the tent. I was part of the team. But you're the ones who kicked me out. And so now, I'm a member of the public. I'm allowed to criticise. If you don't like it, maybe you should have said that when we were inside the tent.
Now can I have a go at Kemi? Now can I have a go at Kemi Badenoch? Is that okay? Just
Yeah.
About what? There's nothing to have a go about. Moving on.
So I think it was this morning. I think it was this morning, was it, where she went on at BBC Breakfast and said, "What else are our jets doing, just hanging around there?" I mean, Chris can tell us whether he thinks the wider point is correct, but it sounded very blasé about she can attack the government for their political decisions, but this sounded like attacking the military. And I don't think that ever goes down well, especially for a Conservative leader, Chris.
Well, you can understand the point she was trying to make. She was saying that they're not where they should be. That's the point that she was making. But Badenoch does have a habit of saying kind of things that are taken the wrong way in the media, and she does that quite a lot. It has to be said. But yes, I mean, it's just. It's just one of these things where I don't think it was meant to come out that way. And we all understand the point she was trying to make, but she just gives her opponent stuff sometimes. But that being said, doing media, we all know, is not the easiest thing in the world, and it's very easy to say something you don't actually mean or anything. So I'm sure I've done that loads of times. But Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, what did you make of that?
Criticism of Kemi? I couldn't dare. I'd be kicked out of the party. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, right. Let's be very clear. The criticism that she was having was about the fact that the British government and the British military seems to be so behind the curve when it comes to everyone else. The way it came across was slagging off the Brits and slagging off our military, which I don't think it was intended as. I think it was intended as, how on earth, when everybody else could see that this was happening, we are so behind and we are in such a weak state. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I think we have six, seven destroyers. I'm bringing the younger audience to your podcast. You're welcome. We have, maybe 7 destroyers left in this country, 3 of which are in repairs, 3 of which take months to get ready, and 1 of which will take 2 weeks to get over to Cyprus. I mean, the war is happening right now. So I think that was the criticism Kemi was trying to get to. I think she was trying to criticise the government into saying we're behind the response, we're slow, what's wrong with us, why are we waiting and watching? I think there was a slight dig about international law as well, the fact that our military is waiting for the command instead of getting involved in the action. But, I mean, it didn't come across well, and it's not the sort of thing to say in the heat of the moment. But I mean, that's the first criticism I think I've had of Kemi for many, many, many months. So it's a poor time to start having to criticise, but at least it's not happening every.
Wasn't great either, though, was it, this week for her? It was a bit namby-pamby.
Namby-pamby. I think it was gooning and whatever the Labour lot were. No, Kemi's been smashing it at PMQs. I mean, tell you what, if it weren't for her PMQs appearances, if it weren't for her PMQs appearances, I think she would have been kicked out as leader. Frankly, no, I
Chris
would
thinks she's
completely
reverted
disagree.
back, don't you, Chris?
Kemi definitely beat Ed Davey when it comes to PMQs this week. So let's hold that one there.
No, I just think. I mean, the one where she absolutely, ripped into Starmer over Mandelson. That was brilliant. But that was because she was, she asked precise questions and she followed them up. The criticism I've always had of Kemi was that she didn't really do that, especially in the early months. She would ask a question on something and then wander off and do something else. And unfortunately,
there was
this
no
week
strategy.
It's a strategy, but it's not. But we've seen the other strategy is more effective. But but I just think this week where she could have pressed him a bit more on as to sort of why she. I mean that, again, this was another reason why she said what she said. I mean, she's in favour of striking back against Iranian assets after the fact that they've attacked or their proxies attacked the base. She could have pressed more on why, sort of, even after the attack on Akrotiri, Starmer's still not given the order for the RAF to participate in actual offensive action. I think she could have followed up more on that. She's kind of tried to go on other areas and I just think we've established that if you actually follow up and really dig deeper, Starmer gets more and more uncomfortable. And I like to see her revert back to doing that, because that she was bloody effective when she did that on the Mandelson thing. But one last question with Badenoch. She did make an announcement, and I think all this illustrates the urgency of spending more on defence, and the fact that we need that the spring statement not really to mention any sort of significant funding or anything like that. It's like, again, the government's living in a completely different world. And here, Kemi Badenoch announced that she would spend more on defence, but she would fund it through bringing back the two-child benefit cap. So that's her policy.
Return of the nasty party.
I suppose I better ask Matthew what he thinks about it.
Which Mathew?
Oh, sorry,
you chose
Mathew
the
Hulbert.
podcast with two Matthews.
Oh, me?
On it.
Oh, so, well, I mean, what I think is that, so again, two things can be right at the same time, can't they? Should we be spending more on defence? Well, look at the dangerous world that we're living in. We clearly should be spending more on defence. I don't think anyone sensible would say otherwise, which is probably why it's the Greens who are saying otherwise. Should I just point out as well that a certain Mr. Zach Polanski reportedly, apparently this week in the London Assembly, and it's interesting that his votes in the London Assembly and what he says are obviously getting much more scrutiny now because he leads a political party. But apparently there was some kind of motion to welcome the fact that the Ayatollah had been killed, and he apparently reportedly voted against the motion to say that he welcomed that. And I think it's on things like that he and the Greens just make themselves look, well, pretty extreme, actually, by what they say and what they do. So I think that's interesting to know. So clearly we need to spend more on defence. I mean, who knows how much wider this conflagration will go and how many other countries will be drawn in. But do I think we should do that through making hundreds of thousands of children poorer through no fault of their own? You may be able to have a go at the parents for having children they can't afford. That's not the fault of the children themselves. And I think the state has a duty to ensure that children live with some kind of standard of food and clothing and housing and all the rest of that. So I'm sorry that Kemi Badenoch has chosen to potentially fund our military on the backs of making children poorer.
But it's also the case that the fundamental duty of the state is the protection of the country. And
well,
it's
it can
not
have
doing
more than one fundamental duty, Chris.
Yeah, but
unless your leader flip-flops on it.
But the fundamental function of the state is security and defence.
But you would agree that there's no more vulnerable people in our state than children, right?
Yeah. But they would even be more vulnerable if there was a military conflict. Now,
what you're saying to them is you might go to school hungry and cold and not very well clothed.
No, I'm not saying that.
But it's okay because at least there's not missiles raining above our skies. I mean, is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, firstly, the money is peanuts to what? Sorry, Matthew Goodwin-Freeman.
No, Chris, go for it. I shall bite my tongue and wait until my turn.
No, the issue is that as I forgot what I was going to say now, but no, but go on, Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. I'll think of it. I'm going senile. Sorry.
Right, Mathew Hulbert, how can you play the emotive string violin card when we're talking about war in the Middle East? I'm sorry, but this is the thing that people hate about whether it's the Lib Dems, it's the Greens, tactics by Labour,
Because
whatever.
we can do more than one thing at once, mate. That's why.
Right? No, but that's what you're doing. You're playing the emotive of your card. You're putting this hyper extreme scenario of where we're either, let me shut this printer up. You're either feeding children or you're bombing London. I'm sorry, but that's not the playing field we're talking about.
That is what Badenoch is saying.
No, it is not. Kemi is saying that we need to scrap this blooming reversal of the two-child benefit cap. Parents need to take responsibility. If you want to have a kid, you pay for that kid. It's not the children's fault, Matthew. Paying for the kid. And no, I'm not saying it's the children's fault. It's the parents' fault. We need responsibility, personal responsibility. Me and my missus, we're not having a kid at the moment. Why? Because we cannot afford to have a kid. We are making the decision
responsible, but not all people are that responsible, and you can be.
Well, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They shouldn't be having kids.
It's not the fault of the children.
No, I'm sorry. We will fundamentally disagree on this. If you cannot afford to have a kid, you should not be having a kid.
I agree, but it's not the fault of the children.
You should be expecting the British government and the British taxpayers to bail you out for it. I'm sorry, but that's the biggest thing.
But what are the fact is these children exist. You can't wish them away, and they deserve to have a certain level of life, don't they? They deserve not to live in poverty.
And they still get some benefit.
So those parents need to be going and working double shifts, getting 2, 3 jobs, working around the clock to put food on the table. I have 2, 3, I think it's 4 jobs putting food on the table and paying the mortgage that the missus and I have got, because that's how it is. Life is unfair. Life is inherently unfair. But frankly, you have to get up and make something of yourself. And that is the frustration that I find in this country. Hard-working Brits are working damn hard round the clock to put food on their table. And then you have people who choose to have 5, 6, 7, 8 kids and go, oh, do you know what? Actually, it's better for me to sit on benefits. That's the frustration in this country. It is more financially worth it. You can check this online. There is a benefits calculator online. It is financially worth it for 2 single people to have 4 kids than it is to go and get jobs. That is unacceptable. It should never be a lifestyle choice.
That is clearly an unsustainable situation. I agree. But all I'm saying... But all I'm saying, Matthew, is that it's not the fault of the children what their parents have done, and you will not find me ever defending a policy which pushes hundreds of thousands of children who are innocent into poverty. You two may defend that policy. I won't be doing that.
No, hold on. It pushes the parents into poverty. Because I'd like to know how many of those parents still have Amazon Prime, still order takeaways, still order Ubers, still order brand new cars, still can't be bothered to make cuts in their finances to fund their household. That's the fact of it. You have to take personal responsibility. You have to live in the world where if you have £100 in your wallet, you have £100 in your wallet. You don't have £100 plus I can borrow some. You have £100. I'm really sorry, but the 2-child benefit cap is there to stop people having the freedom to have as many kids as they want, because people become irresponsible. That is the fact of it. And so what we're seeing is people having tons and tons of kids, playing the benefit system, which is a spiralling massive debt in this country as well. And so now the government's saying, well, we'll scrap the 2-child benefit cap. I'm sorry, but that's going to make the situation worse. If it weren't bad enough as it is, it's going to get worse.
I just say, think of the children. Think of the children.
It's not the children's fault.
It's just not practical to fund a policy which doesn't have an end state to it. So, and especially with all of the pressures, with what we're discussing with defence, but also debt interest that we're paying, with the need to pay down our debt, it's not practical to have a policy where there is no endpoint, and that's why and they still get benefits with 2. So it's not as if we're taking all of their money away.
Oh, as long as you're the first two children, you're honestly ridiculous. Can I just, as we no doubt come to the end of our time today, I mean, as big a thing as this conflagration obviously is, and it's affecting many people, obviously including my own family. I think I'm right in saying, though, aren't I, that actually it's very rare that people vote in terms of international situations. I mean, even in 2005, just 2 years after Iraq, Blair was back, albeit with a very reduced majority. It is still, isn't it? Domestic matters which people predominantly vote on. So, I mean, do you think this will have any impact at all on the voting in May or not?
No, I think people vote on the matters that are relevant to them. The May elections are going to be a by-election effectively on this government, but also on the local matters. Are your bins being collected? Are you getting, like in Harrow, 1 hour free parking? Have you got good, hard-working
I saw your final speech this week.
Well, you say my final speech. It turns out we may be having one more council meeting, so I may have to have another rip of Labour to shreds. Look, no, I genuinely think elections are a weird one because local elections tend to be a referendum on the government, but they matter locally. It's the bins, it's the potholes, it's the roads, it's the pavements, it's the services that you get locally that the government have nothing to say over. I've tried to be a very good councillor over the last 4 years, reply to emails, get stuff done, focus on the local things. I'd like to think that's what voters, in my ward are going to go and vote about, whether they think I've been any good or not. But it is a weird world where we live in, where local elections are about national issues, and the national elections can sometimes be focused on the local issues. But look, I don't think this is going to have any impact on the national situation. I think it's going to have any impact on the May elections because there's no what's the win, right? The Green Party coming out and saying no, it's bad what the Americans are doing. We'd rather the Iranian regime. That's not going to win votes. Right. Like the Conservatives coming out and saying, yeah, we should be bombing with America and bomb the heck out of it. That's not going to win votes. So there's no win to come out of this. It is sadly an issue far, far away unless you have a connection to it. So I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on the May elections, but I think it will dominate the news. I think this is going to dominate the news for the next however many weeks and months.
And it just feeds into a narrative that's already been established with this government in the sense that it's not very good and it's weak, it's ineffectual and it's very slow. It hasn't told us anything new about what this government is really. So it just reinforce everything as opposed to establish anything new.
No. Can I just have a few words about next week?
Yeah.
Because next week is our 50th episode of yes, thank you, Matthew, of Political Frenemies. I know that don't include the kind of few precursor ones that we did, and don't include the emergency episodes. But in terms of the main episodes of Political Frenemies, the weekly episodes, this will be our 50th episode. And the plan is, and stick around after we finish recording, Matthew, for a second, because I just want to talk to you about this. But what I'm hoping to do next week is to have our first ever panel of 6 here on Political Frenemies. That's partly down to Chris because he does all the technology, bless him, with the help and sometimes the hindrance of Riverside. No, I can't be naughty about them. They might do something to it. But we're hoping to have our first ever panel of 6.
You cut out this episode.
Yeah, it is. And also, Matthew, you'll be pleased to hear this. I'm bringing back the quiz. Do you remember the quiz? Yeah, I know.
Get it! Come on!
The quiz. So really happy about that. And it will be questions about our 50 episodes of Political Frenemies. So that still needs a little bit of organising, but I'm putting it into the ether that it will happen. So look out for next week's episode, the 50th episode. Also, whilst you're doing that, to make sure that you don't miss it, because, I mean, why would you want to? make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're liking, make sure you're telling your friends, make sure that you're following us on X at Political Frenemies, and looking forward to that, Chris.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. Thanks once again to Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. But I'm really looking forward to next week. And do join us for our 50th episode. And we'll see you then on Political Frenemies. Goodbye.